G'day fam, welcome to another episode of the Balcony Podcast. I'm joined by one of my Justo's team members, Kyra Williams. Welcome to the podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I'm really excited about some of the lessons that we're going to unpack later in the podcast. But Kyra and I have talked about this before recording, that the uniqueness of Kyra's events might not apply to everyone that's listening. But Kyra said it really well before we started, that potentially this podcast can be a catalyst for those that might not have these type of unique events happen to them, but maybe are feeling a little bit lost and need a catalyst to make some significant change in their lives, maybe have some more self-reflection beyond anything that COVID's potentially offered them. So whilst there might not be so many specifics that you resonate with this story, I think the lessons that we're going to spend the majority of the time unpacking are going to be where the real value lies. But I won't steal all your thunder. I'll let you kick off running through, I guess, the experience that we're hinting at.
Yeah, so I think I want to start by kind of talking a little bit about my childhood, how I grew up,
Sure.
And kind of go into like that piece first.
Mm-hmm.
So you and me had very different growing up stories.
Yes.
I was raised in a very cookie cutter, yeah. White picket fence type family, very, very wonderful, very loving, always felt super, super supported.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like when I got to university, as much as my parents and family had supported me and been there for me, I felt a little like that normalcy and that love and support made me very, very trusting, very there was a sense of naivety that I had, where I basically I thought everybody had great intentions, everything was gonna be fine, everything in life was just gonna go my way, I can control everything, it's all good. But I think a lot of people going into university feel that way too. It's that sense of invincibility.
Mm-hmm.
And
very good point.
I think that's really normal, and I feel like it's something that a lot of us learn, I think, later in life through life experiences, that life is crazy, there's lots of ups and downs, and whatever your story is, whatever is your timeline, whatever that looks like for you, I think that can change depending. I feel like that stays the same depending, no matter what you're going through. I think that learning can come at any time in your life, and you can get the same outcomes. But also, there's times where people don't go through any life-changing experience to feel that sense of no control or realizing that they're not invincible. So that's where I'll kind of go into my story. So raised in a great family, super feeling super loved, and thinking the world was my oyster. Nothing could go wrong. And then May 2019 hit, and I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, so cancer, and I guess it's sensitive for me to talk about. But I kind of, where that started was I started kind of feeling back pain, getting back spasms. Something as simple as that. I've had back problems in the past. I still do from previous injury. And I immediately just thought I had a pinched nerve. And that's what the doctors were saying. I went to the hospital with these back spasms, and they're like, nah, it's probably nothing. You're fine. I had to go back a couple of times asking if I could get an MRI, and they finally agreed. And then turned out that the MRI they didn't do it right.
Yeah.
And then I had to get another. So before I got scheduled in for another MRI that same week, which was the last week of my 3rd year of university in business, and like business kids are crazy, like they like to party, and so literally that Monday after our last exam I was partying like at the club, like feeling great, like loving life, nothing, like feeling awesome. And it was literally that week, that same week, that I felt absolutely great. Everything changed. I got the back spasms again, but it didn't go away, and the doctors brushed it off again. Thankfully, my parents, super supportive, were my biggest advocates. Like, they were like, no, something's wrong here. My daughter's in pain. Yeah. Like, you gotta do something.
Well, that's wild in itself that was like the experience.
Yeah, and I think that's really key. And if there's anyone in the hospitals, like, I know a lot of people are really wonderful and like obviously are super valued, super care about their job. But then of course, like in any work environment, you have people that are just not that way, and they're just trying to be efficient, right?
Sure. Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, that was my experience. And then I found out I was in the hospital with my parents sitting behind me, and we started having the cancer talk with the doctor. He sat us down. It was like the movies. I remember feeling like it was a dream. I was like holding my parents' hands. Yeah. We knew it was bad because he's like, okay, you need to sit down. Like, yeah. And I was sitting in front of my parents, and I could hear them like sobbing behind me, and I just had to stay so strong. Like, I just didn't want to cry. Like, I just held it all in. I was like trying to stay strong. Immediately had to get rushed into surgery because where the cancer was in my lower back. And that they had to relieve it off of the nerves that were there. Otherwise, I could have been paralyzed from the waist down. There was like a 24-hour period of time that I had before that could happen.
There's some universe stuff in that, timing wise, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So then after that, I was in complete denial. I was like, I'm going to Vancouver. That was my original plan. I had a great job lined up. I was like, okay, this is going to be sweet. I'm going to go have a great summer, party all the time. Like, go hang out with my friends. Yep. Like, it's going to be awesome. And then this happened, and so I'm like, okay, I'll live a healthier summer. I'll not go out as much, and I'll still live with my friends. I'll still do my job, and this can just be something on the side. Sure, it's all good, right? Yeah. And I remember coming out of surgery and saying to the nurse, I told her, I was like, okay, like, when can I go to Vancouver? And she's like, girl, like, that's not gonna happen. And my doctor was like, okay, in all seriousness, like, you're not going, and you're going to be fighting for your life for the rest of this year. Yeah. And that was like a game changer for me. I just remember staying up all night that night. You know, okay, well, holy shit, how did this happen? I was like living the full normal life, like a day ago. Yeah. And then everything changes in like a moment. And I think that's super key for anyone to think about is that change between living normal and then that can be just taken away from you, taken away from you so fast. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a huge, like, a paradigm shift like that is a huge lesson. But I think let's go from that moment. Let's run through treatment to now where you're at events wise, and then let's revisit that shift and talk about all the like mental learnings, because I think we'll just keep tangenting from those.
True. Okay.
So because you're sitting here, so at the start of summer they're like, you're going to be fighting for your life this whole year, but you're here.
So I went through chemo. I did all of the shebang, and then in that August I was put into doing a stem cell transplant treatment, which is crazy. Like, they basically kill off all of your cells, basically kill you.
You had to sign a contract?
I had to sign a contract, all the papers, being like, okay, this is my life. Like, I give you my life, basically. Yeah. and that full trust in the doctors. Wonderful team at Vancouver General Hospital, and they just treated me like like I was one of their kids, you know, like I was one of their own, and I felt so loved by that team and the bone marrow transplant team there. But yeah, you kind of just have to wait and see if the stem cells work. It's basically just put into you with an IV, super non-invasive. Just it feels like it's over in a second, and then you're waiting to see if those cells are happy with your body. And finally they found their way, and now I'm living with a new immune system from whoever. I think I get to maybe meet them this summer.
That'd be crazy.
My donor.
Wow.
And feeling so good, but yeah, I'm just like so thankful, and that's like such a big piece. Is like, I wish I had, like, I've always been grateful for life, but I wish that I had this gratitude sooner. And I think a lot of people don't need a life experience to, like, a huge life experience like this, to find that gratitude and to find like that like everyday present moment thinking of like, what am I going to do today to be happy?
Yeah. I think you're so right, and I think we can start to really go from the lessons that you started learning. Let's go back to the start of summer where you had that realization. So thank you, for unpacking all that. That's some serious stuff to talk about. I know it's tough, so I really appreciate you telling that story. And also thank you for setting it up with a little bit of background about how you grew up. You know, I'm a big advocate in that, forming a lot of things. This whole what is happening right now is because of all that type of stuff. I'm filming this because of my experiences and where that's got to. So thank you for setting the scene. So you talked about your mental state growing up, and then you have this event and you get told this news, and your whole life is completely flipped in that moment. Now, we've spoken about this a lot, but we'll talk about it for everyone else to hear. I want you to start talking about, I guess, the realizations you made. You talked about almost the end game there, about that waking up in the morning now, and, you know, that gratitude piece. But that wasn't immediately how you felt that day. There's a few things that you had to go through and realize through that process to get to here. Let's tell the people about that.
In terms of...
So you get the news, and your whole world's flipped, and you're thinking, okay, what's next? And you're going through the treatment process. How did you get from that moment to now? You know, you've told me we'll get through the yoga stuff, we'll go through the Justo stuff, all those type of things. Like, that's a crazy transformation. But
I think, like, I was definitely, like, living my best life before everything. Like, I definitely, like, I was going after my dream job. Like, I had gotten that dream job. Like, I think I've always been a very motivated person, but at the same time, I never, like, I kind of just felt like that was just, like, what happens. I didn't really realize, like, oh, I'm, like, I have full control over what I want. I don't have to do anything that anyone says. Like, I can do whatever I want. It's my life. And I think that's super key, because I've changed my perspective in terms of wanting to live my life according to my terms. And that's been so game changing, because I'm like, okay, so this is what we're supposed to do. Like, we're supposed to get out of high school, go to university. We are supposed to find a great job. That's got to be well paying.
100%.
And
tick.
You got to get married and have kids.
Eventually.
And this is your life.
It's and definition of success.
That's the timeline. That's the order that you have to live it. And that's not true at all, and that's how I totally thought my life was going to go, was in exactly in that order.
I was following that as well. Yeah. And
then I realized, like, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go after everything that other people are doing that make me jealous. Which sounds so almost superficial, but kind of, it's just the simplest way to put it.
Yeah, talk about the nutrition list, that influence.
Yeah. There's this girl now that I work with, and she's a nutritionist, or a nutrition coach. And I'm like, holy crap, she's telling me about her story, what her job is. I'm like, that so aligns with what I'm into, and that is so cool. And I'm like, okay, that's a little hint from the universe, like maybe that's something that I'd be interested in doing, right?
Yep.
And it's taking those little those feelings, those pangs in your heart where you're like, okay, that's really cool, I want to do that. And it was with Justos, where I saw what you guys are doing, and I was like, this is so cool. I love that, like Adam is my age, and he's in my classes. We're graduating at the same time, basically, and he's got it, like, all together. That was what I thought. I was like, I mean, so Adam, get off your high horse.
Adam, you've got your shit together. Everything, 100%.
But I was like, these guys are just going after what they want, and I love it. And this was after my diagnosis. This was like this past summer, and I just was like, okay, I'm kind of jealous of what they're doing. I'm just gonna be like, hey, just gonna message them on Instagram, slide into the DMs. This
is key. We're both here from a Justos perspective, from sliding into DMs. So that's this is living proof that it works. But there's a few things that you've mentioned that I want to highlight a little bit there. So you talked about the nutritionist and that feeling in your heart and all that type of stuff. So a lot of stuff that I'm reading right now is all about, you've talked about manifestation a lot, but there are signs when you put energy out there, it comes back in different ways. You get more, I guess, aligned in your mind to see those things present themselves when you usually wouldn't be looking for them. So like you may have come across that nutritionist in another stage in your life, but unless you were thinking in that different way, it would have meant the thing that it means to you. And a really close friend this week talked to me about her own personal experiences and someone giving her just a piece of information that has just changed everything. And it's almost like sometimes in your brain there's like, I don't know, this sounds sciencey, but I'm just making it up, like neurological pathways that are like aligned, but there's almost like a roadblock in between. And then sometimes you either hear something or you meet someone, nutritionist, and it almost like just turns that block, and then those two things connect, and it's just like magic in your mind. So I feel like that's almost what happened. But you have to be listening and attuned and like ready for that stuff as well.
You have to feel that in your heart. You need to trust what your heart's saying. 100%. Versus what everyone around you is saying, because that's what really matters.
Yeah, for sure.
And I felt that with Justos. I felt that my whole life, but not recognizing it, that I really thought it was so cool what yoga teachers do. And that changed everything for me, because I ended up getting my yoga teacher certification this past fall. So super stoked about that.
Yes, congrats. Well, it's huge, because you talked about and I was doing that too. You go to school, you get the degree, you get the job, you're set. And I did that. I ticked all those boxes. Wasn't married.
You're in the executive scene.
Right, Just living the corporate dream, but not happy, not aligned, not fulfilled, none of the heart stuff that we're talking about. But that society tells you that's what to do. And I think almost COVID has given everyone another list of societal bounds or limits on their life now. They think they can't do this because of this or this type of stuff as well. But like you said, you can do whatever you want outside of traveling in certain areas right now. You can literally, you can change the movie A Knight's Tale is one of my favorite movies, and they talk about changing your stars in that movie, and that's essentially what you're doing. So talk a little bit more about your yoga journey, and a little bit, you're sort of skimming over, you're probably not giving yourself enough like credit for your internal growth. I think you're talking a lot about some other external influences, but you've had to grow a lot in how you see the world, what you appreciate, your gratefulness space, all those type of things. So maybe talk a little bit how yoga fits into those things with your growth, because it's pretty impressive.
I feel like yoga, and I feel like for me, yoga is a way for me to kind of like continue leading this life of gratitude. I feel like it's something that is so easily kind of put on the back burner because we get so caught up in everyday life. And those little things that really don't matter, but we think matter so much at the time, start to kind of cloud our brains with like all these different, like it's like our sky, like our minds are like a sky, like a blue sky, and we get all these like gray clouds kind of filling in our brains, and they're actually just like holding us back and clouding over what's really like this beauty of life. And I think for me, yoga or any type of like daily practice is
Sure.
so important, because whatever brings you back to what really matters is what's going to propel you forward 10 times more than being overwhelmed by those little things. And I know it's easy to be overwhelmed because like we live in such a fast-paced society, and like we like in our we have our phones, we've got technology.
Phones.
It's like work never leaves us.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're constantly being faced by all these different demands and like different people wanting our attention, and really what matters is you.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like you have responsibilities, and that's key too, but it's knowing when to clear the space for yourself, when to be like, okay, I'm just going to take a second to journal. If meditation is something you like to do, meditate, or go do yoga. Sometimes that helps, like if you're moving, right, to connect with your body. And realistically, that's all that matters. If you're connecting to your body, and that's another thing, like with my experience is like the body connection, like I am so self-aware now, but that doesn't need to be found with like a crazy medical journey. It can be found by just taking those little steps, like, okay, I'm gonna like put aside 5 minutes of my day only. It can even be that much.
I
agree.
agree.
Spend that much time just like listening to your breath, listening to what's going on around you, but not focusing and judging those thoughts that kind of come up, those anxious things. And I know that like mental health is so real, and those things do come up, and sometimes I feel like you can't get rid of them. They cloud everything. The clouds come in, stormy skies, but that is possible to clear away. We just have to kind of come back into our bodies, because our bodies are there for us. Our bodies are going to help us move through and away from all of these things that kind of cloud the surface. And yeah, I think that's super key with yoga and just listening to your body, and with my experience, and that's one big takeaway. Is that piece.
You talked about journaling.
And
we were talking about this before, that you had because we had, behind the scenes a little bit, we caught up before this to talk a little bit about what we talked about.
We cheated.
And you, between now and then, you came across a journal entry from last year that you kind of can remember off the top of your head a little bit.
I know, I was gonna bring it.
Yeah, I know, but I still, this is better because you're experiencing it live and testing yourself a little bit. But we were talking about it before, and you kind of got the gist of the original entry and the second entry, and they were very interesting, the timing of them, the message behind them, and the learning behind them. And I'm glad that you included in that last explanation of that piece with the body about it, not having to have your type of intense experience to have those thoughts or start that practice. And I said this to Ted on the last podcast about, it's called practice for a reason. But maybe talk 100%. Talk a little bit about those journal entries, because it's really profound, I think, what you wrote in that moment and then where you ended up. And I think it's pretty cool.
I feel like when I wrote this journal last year, this journal entry, and it was at a time where I felt I was feeling like I was getting over my recovery, and I was feeling like my energy levels were more consistent, and I felt like this drive, this pull to do whatever the hell I wanted, like, or heck, or whatever is not obscene for this podcast.
Oh, you can fucking swear as much as you want. You can say, like, we won't drop the Aussie main word, but you can, go nuts. This is mostly Australian viewers, so they'll probably like it, so go your eyes.
So basically I just wanted to just go with my fucking heart, and I just wanted to follow it, and I just felt this pull from my heart, like I need to do something, I need to like fill my life with passion and love, and just something, I need to do something that really fulfills me. And it was actually with Justos that I first felt that little pang in my heart where I was like, that's so cool. And that's like kind of the first step that I took to really going after what I wanted. And I think that is something that we can all do. I think that we overcomplicate it in our heads, how hard that is.
Yeah.
When it's really not that hard, and we think that it's like, I've been caught doing that so many times where I'm like, oh, like there's this, so I don't have time for that right now, or I'm like tied in with this, or whatever it is. There's it's so easy to make excuses, like so easy.
Yes. Yeah.
But if we take it down to what our heart is saying, and like, oh, if you actually want it, just do it. Like, life is so short, it can change in a second. And it's not hard to just, like, it feels hard because of all these little, like, things floating around us.
Yeah.
But if we just bring it back to the heart, to our bodies, and really just feel with our intuition, like, our intuition is so strong that we can easily just go after it. And sometimes you might fail, and that's normal too. Like,
that's how you learn.
But you went after it, and that's fulfilling in itself.
I agree. Yeah.
That's how I feel anyway.
I was, it's funny you talk about that gut feeling, the intuition. I literally, Justin and I spoke maybe 15 times today. And on one of those phone calls, I said to him, I was like, Justin, I just feel like I'm in this space now where, like, I'm so confident in just being like, no, that's what my gut's telling me to do. Like that's what you should do. And I think it's because of my journey since being here, and you know, some of the similar learnings that you've had, and we've talked about these last time. But when you really connect with yourself, that gut feeling thing, that intuition thing, it almost just becomes second nature with what you're doing, because you know yourself more. You know, with what you went through in that moment where your life shifted and you were, you know, in the hospital, and you were forced to be just with yourself a lot and think about who you are and what you want to do and why, and that feeling, and that first journal entry about just feeling tethered to something, like, follow that. That's what I would implore everyone to do that's listening, is, you know, listen to that a lot more, follow that, take that risk, be a little bit uncomfortable, because when you're in that discomfort, that's when you grow. One of my closest friends back in Australia, I was talking to him today, he's like, after 4 years of just tossing and turning with this thing, he's finally made a decision to change it. And like, I'm so stoked for him, but I would just know that feeling that he's feeling now is just overwhelmingly positive, and I'm so stoked for him. Actually, another friend back in Australia also is going back to, he's going to uni for something, and it's just like, I know he's been like, what you talked about, those little things that float around. Sometimes it's society telling you that you can and can't, sometimes it's your past, sometimes it's whatever, but you can draw a line. Yours was drawn for you almost, but that line can be drawn yourself, which is, I think, the biggest take we want to give for people, that you can make that decision to shift into a space of empowerment for yourself, following what you want to do, sending someone a DM that you want to, professionally speaking, of course, obviously is what we're talking about.
A business,
100%.
special someone.
maybe it is. Who knows? But I think that's really cool. So that was, you talked about your first journal entry being that tethered, that feeling. And you wrote a second one, and you remember going back and revisiting that, and that was a cool experience for you.
Yeah, I reread it, and it's actually interesting, because when I wrote that, like, I wasn't even thinking, like, I didn't even read back at the last one, but I remember looking at it just this past week after we talked, and I was just astounded. I'm like, this is where I was. My mind, everything about me was saying, go after something. And then only a few months later, I ended up like getting there. And at that time, I probably didn't know if that was, like, I didn't know it was possible. And I just went after it, and it happened, and I manifested it, and it's just so fulfilling, and it's like an adrenaline rush. It's like when you go after something, you get it. It's like, that's kind of one of, like, we can't control what's going on around us, and we definitely can't control, like, if we get something or not. But we can control our actions in attempting to get somewhere. And we can control our actions of, like, how we choose to spend the day. We might have a crazy busy work day, but if we take 5 minutes of the day to just, like, take some time for ourselves, just to give a little piece of happiness in there, that's like, you should try to fulfill your day with as much happy things as possible.
We'll talk about that a little bit more. I remember when we were talking, you were like, it was almost, I distinctly remember you talking about how you, like, have to have that part of your day, whether it's nature, whether it's something, and that you're at this point now where you've shifted so much that, like, you're almost getting frustrated if you're, like, not having those experiences. You know what I'm talking about? You can probably explain it better than I am right now, but
I get so frustrated if I am not doing something that fulfills me in my day.
That's crazy to think. Like,
I get restless.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get so restless because I'm like, what if, like, I think a piece of me, it's not like this goes through my head, but I think a piece of me is like, this could be my last day.
Yeah.
And I felt that before with my experience. And I think that's kind of like, it triggers this piece of me where I'm like, I need to have a good day every day. And that's one thing I'm struggling with, because obviously not every day is good. So I have to kind of not get stuck in those clouds and let my self just have acceptance and non-judgment for how I'm feeling. If I'm having a bad day, that's okay too. Yeah. That's normal. That's life.
Yeah.
Not every day is going to be good, but I do try to like be intentional about it and having each day be meaningful in some way. Whether it's even just like making someone feel happy, like if you're just like you're walking past someone who's living on the streets and just like saying hi to them, like that's enough. Like that fulfills my day because I know that that person's day is just a little bit better. Yeah. And like I think if we just take those little things, there's so many little things that we can do that we can just a little tweak, you know, just a little tweak in our day that we can change. Like if it's kind of not stressing out the door and spending an extra 5 minutes to talk to somebody, that's not going to take up your whole day. That's 5 minutes of your day where you can give that person attention, and that attention might have been really needed. Yep. You don't know if that person just needed to be listened to. Yeah. Because they were going through something, or and it's just like listening to the world around you. Yeah.
If anyone's ever gone to a restaurant or a bar or anything with me, not so much in COVID, I guess, but like normally I always try to make a big fuss around the server and try and like, you know, find out not just their name, but something they're into, ask them for advice, something that just hopefully makes them laugh or something, because same philosophy is like, you could have had 100 like fucking annoying pain in the ass people that day, and then there might be that one, and you could be that one. You could always be that one, and that can be in any circumstance. But I think you're talking about the time is our most valuable resource, and it's something that we ultimately don't have complete control over. But that sense of morality in terms of thinking about death, people think that it's a really negative space, but it actually makes you think about life in a different way. And the word that you used multiple times there was intent and intention. And that's the main thing that you can control. You can wake up every day and have positive intentions. I said to a friend who were walking this week, and I'd never said this sentence before. I said, right now in my life, I feel like every day I wake up and I make my life a little bit better, and I make the life of people around me a little bit better. And what more can anyone else want in life? How you do that can be so completely different, because everyone is so unique and different. But I never verbalized those words before, and I've been thinking about it since. I was like, wow, what an interesting space that I'm in. I'm sure that you're feeling quite similar with the intention side of things.
For sure. I feel that I think those moments where you feel the most out of control as well are the times where those little pieces of intention will kind of help find your way. You can kind of find your way through whatever it is bothering you, or that feels like if you feel like your whole life is just out of control, you can maybe just bring it back to intention and find that little piece of control in your day. It's even like it can come through in a lot of different ways as well. Like sometimes, like I find that even just like in my morning routine, like making sure that everything is put away properly after, instead of like coming home to like a really messy room, you know? Yeah. Like coming home to a clean space, like is enough that sometimes like that can just bring you back. Like just doing those little things, whatever it is for you, to just come back to the fact that like you can control certain things. And I think as human beings, like we want to control things so badly. Sure, yeah. And obviously we can't. Yeah. And that was a big piece for me, was like letting go of those attachments to what could be controlled and what couldn't be. And I always felt like I was in control before. And now I'm like, hey, no, that's not how it works.
100%. Yeah.
And I think that in any way that you can find control, that's great. But also, it's like letting go of like things having to be a certain way. And I think that's really hard to be able to not, like, it's hard to not look at something and think that this needs to be this way and that's the only way, and that's something that I'm holding on to, you know. Like I've done that in like a lot of my life, and a big one is the fact that I always thought I would have kids, and for me now I can't have kids biological kids. But I had to change that attachment, and I still struggle with it a lot, because that was always like a really strong attachment for me. But now I'm like, okay, there's this was maybe how society sees how it's supposed to be, you know, like having a kid should be super easy. And it's those things that we hold on to that hurt us so much when we get them ripped away from us. Yes. But just knowing that in your heart, like, there's always something that you can find joy from that might be different, and that's okay. Like, I think it's those spontaneous things that happen in life. They're not good necessarily, but that's something that can also bring you joy, and I'm still learning that myself. But I think it's just like the spontaneousness, or I don't know how to say the other actual word.
I'm trying to think about it.
I can't think of the word right now.
That one.
You know?
Yeah.
But having that is what makes life beautiful.
Yeah, you're so right. Thank you for sharing that. I completely agree. I think every person that comes into your life, every experience you have is a lesson. It doesn't mean they're easy to swallow or go through. But you're right, finding that little light through those things, like, it's there. It might not seem like it at the time, even in the worst scenarios, even cancer, but it's there. And being brave enough to have a feeling that you weren't sure of and grab a hold of this rope that was tethered to your heart, that's super impressive. And I'm sure everyone listening is going to be like, you have gone through what you've gone through to still have to think about those things that you just talked about, you know, that life-altering stuff, and to sit here and speak so positively about, you know, what you're doing, where you're going, the intentions that you have. That's, like, absolutely amazing, Kyra. You should be, it's so impressive.
Thank you.
And we talked about this before filming, is that, you know, we acknowledged at the start, not everyone's going to go through my childhood, your health experience, you know, breakups, all this type of stuff. But there's, you know, you can choose a moment to just be a catalyst in your life to make some positive intentions for yourself and really make significant change for yourself and for others around you as well. I think the common theme on a lot of the stuff, Ted and I spoke about it a lot, we've hinted at it a lot, is, you know, it doesn't have to be meditation or yoga, but that space, there's lots of options. People use exercise for it, to reconnect with yourself every day, all the time. Like you said, you can't control the world around you. Even if you think you're in control, you're not.
Nope.
The only thing you can control is your intentions, yourself. Even your thoughts sometimes will run away with you, but you can create a space to get better at that as well, that practice space. I think we've unpacked most of the things we said we were going to talk about. Is there anything that you can think about that we wanted to share in terms of lessons for
I have one thing.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll bring it back to you, actually.
No one's done this before. Yeah, go for it.
I want to know, like, from your upbringing, from your background, how do you think that's affected your take on intention and living intentionally now?
It's the first time anyone's asked. No, great question. And I've thought about this a lot. So I always had intention through my experience, but it was always negatively geared. So what I mean by that is, when I was growing up, through the experiences that I was going through, I set you talked about the school job success arc. I set that as, like, my lighthouse to get out of the experience that I was in, almost in spite of my family. So it was very negatively geared and oriented. almost blinkers on, like, okay, just be the best at the sports you can, be the smartest, go get the jobs, go make heaps of money, like, go live somewhere else, like, get out kind of thing. So I had a lot of intention, but it came from such a negative, unhealthy place. And that's why I think every time I got those things, I was never fulfilled and was never happy in relationships as well. I didn't know how to have them because I was never shown how to have them. So the first few, I was like, this is a disaster. I don't know what the hell is going on here. It took so much pain, bad relationships, negative experiences, injuries through sport, going through different steps to finally realize that the problem was that I was always looking out and never looking in.
Yeah, that's real.
Mm-hmm. And this was the first step of looking in, finally recognizing that maybe I have some natural gift in people skills and connecting with people and stuff, and going, well, maybe I can actually make a positive difference in the world, in the community. Going through a breakup with a friend and learning through this stuff and being vulnerable, being honest, changed everything. And then obviously coming here and going through what I went through here and being so alone here. I was only left with myself, and that was kind of like what I felt was the last step of, you've talked a good game a little bit, now go and live it. And the meditation piece and all that has created a space that's changed my life the best way. I'm saying sentences to people like, I wake up every day and make my life better and everyone else's better. Or, I say to Justos, the other Justin, or the other Justos guys, like, I went from having a corporate job and everything you could want and being unhappy or confused or lost to just making up schedules every day with not much money, but absolutely loving every single day right now. So that's my answer.
I think that's a good answer. Also, I think it's really interesting too, because that society piece and like feeling the pressures of society to live up to what you kind of set up for yourself. Like you easily could have let that kind of push you down, and you were able to find a way as well, which is really great.
Thanks.
Because I think it's really hard. It's hard to like not let society's thoughts get into your head and feel the pressure of, oh, well, everyone thinks of this of me, and what if that's not me, And I think that can easily, I think a lot of us deal with self-doubt, and it's really just bringing it back again to just knowing that you can bring it back to yourself and what really matters, and clearing out those clouds by and seeing the blue sky by coming back to what really matters and what you want and what you feel in your heart.
I agree 100%. The definition of success that society paints in front of you is so contingent on others and things that you can't control, really. And until I'm reading stuff, and I've been writing some blog stuff, and some of the things that can continue to present themselves in my mind. If your definition of success doesn't involve helping others in some way, I think it's lacking. And also that ultimately, like, success is really just measured by self-progress. Like, internally, no other measures, no money, no career, no title, just learning and growing as an individual. That's success. People get dealt so many different cards. What you've experienced, what I've experienced, disabilities, so many other things that aren't controllable, but you can make yourself better and focus on that, and that's the most important thing. To serve yourself first and then be able to serve others, that's a fulfilled life. Your unique talents and gifts and experiences will lead that off into yoga, all the things I'm doing. Like, that's the unique human element, but I don't know, I think you're spot on with that. So
for sure.
Wow. Ask me a question back, Kyra.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
God, I'm a little bit sweaty in this hot well, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. No, honestly, Kyra, thank you so much for. I know we spoke about it before recording that. It's really hard for you to talk about this. This is, I can't put myself in your shoes in that experience, that world just completely flipping upside down multiple times. you know, you've only been in my life for a short period of time, but I'm so proud of you for
Aw.
where you're at and what you're doing, and being able to sit here and talk to me and anyone else that's listening about it. It's great, and I'm sure so many other people are going to be so impressed and proud of your story. And like we said at the start, yes, the circumstances that we've both gone through are quite unique, but there's hopefully some takeaways that everyone can get from those.
I think so, for sure.
Cool.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks for coming.